next presentation, both of our speakers are senior principals at DT Consulting. So please join me as we welcome Hannah Price and Jeff French for a conversation on the CX Freefall. Can GenAI rescue pharma's failing CX? Please welcome.
Good afternoon. How is everybody today? Feeling good after lunch? Yeah? Fantastic. So my name is Jeff French, part of DT Consulting, and my partner in crime for the next 20 minutes. I will let you introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Hannah Price, and today we're going to be talking to you about some of the findings from our 2025 HCP customer experience research, which I think you've been seeing teasers of, depending on where you're sitting in the room on some of the screens all day. So to begin with, you can probably see from the title of today's presentation a little bit of what some of those insights are going to be. But before we deep dive into those insights into more detail, I'll just provide a little bit of a grounding for those in the room who don't work with us currently when it comes to the work we do inside the customer experience space. So DT Consulting is the strategy part of Indigen that focuses really on the belief that if we get our capabilities right inside our organization, if we create strong HCP engagement journeys, we move the needle on customer experience, the perception that HCPs have of pharma organizations, and that leads to strong HCP-based outcomes for pharma organizations. And our research backs this up. So if we look at this piece of research that we did last year and again this year when it comes to the importance of customer experience inside the decision-making journey for HCPs, this slide has traveled far and wide in terms of the conversations that we have with organizations around what is the importance of customer experience. Why do we need to be thinking about it when it comes to the ways that we work inside our organizations, when it comes to thinking about what's going to move the needle when it comes to HCP prescription-making decisions. So, if we know that this is an important factor, how do we then look at it inside our organizations? Firstly, we have to think about what are those drivers when it comes to HCP engagement. And from our perspective, we look at three core drivers: the relevance of the information that is provided, the trustworthiness of those information that we provide in services, and then the simplicity of being able to get that information or service from a pharma organization. So, if we think about those three elements together, inside DT, we put those together through a calculation that we call the Customer Experience Quotient, or the CXQ. And we ask HCPs of the interactions that they're having with pharma organizations, how do you rate these three drivers, and how does that pharma organization perform when it comes to those different drivers? For the 2025 research, we spoke to over 6,000 HCPs in 13 markets across 8 specialty areas and got 12,000 responses. And the responses that we got this year when it came to the experience that your HCPs are having with your organizations is not as good as last year. We saw that HCP experience with pharma organizations dropped 4 points overall. This is the first time we've had a drop since COVID. In 2019 to 2020, we had a 10-point drop in the CXQ score. And this is the first time we've seen a drop since. As you can see, quite interestingly, there is a difference between non-digital and digital channels. So when we think about non-digital channels, we're thinking about our reps, we're thinking about our MSLs, we're thinking of in-person events. And we saw there about a 5-point drop. And then when we think about digital channels, so that is what we're doing on our websites, that's what we're doing in our emails, that's what we're doing around virtual events, we saw a 2-point drop. So, Jeff, I'm going to hand over to you to hear what have you kind of looked at from some of the initial data and have some of the conversations that you've been having with clients in that space.
So it's strange at the moment. It's a funny environment. So if you think about it, the reality of the experience going down over the last year, why do we think that is? Well, funnily enough, what have we all been doing? What have we been talking about today, mostly? Investment in other capabilities. So I've been talking to other clients, and a lot of them are feeling, hey, look, there's a couple things that they're seeing, one of which is just that, right? Where their focus has been changed, where it was about building and driving capabilities to achieve a particular outcome. Now it's about, hey, they're building and driving capabilities, they got more capabilities to do. Right? So the focus of why we're doing these things has to stay up in front of everyone. Secondly, the other big thing is expectations are going up. I think it was said earlier today in a couple of the presentations. Your expectations of how you are now engaged personally, whether it be digital, whether it be non-digital, has significantly rose over the past year, especially with AI. Now the bench is even higher. So what we're hearing is a lot of that. The clients, the physician customers are expecting more from us, right? And we're focused on still building stuff. We talked a lot about data a few minutes ago. Lauren has some great points around data. Are we using it effectively? Are we actually using it to learn? There was a couple moments earlier today with Ashish and others about how we need to do that more frequently. So a lot of clients are talking about, hey, we're doing great stuff, we're building great capabilities. What we're not doing is applying them effectively to actually achieving the right outcome, which is the experience with our physician customers.
So then, if we look at some of the key insights that have come out inside the data itself. So yes, there's been a drop overall, but actually some of the nuances that sit inside that. So for example, we actually saw website scores go up. So from your perspective, what do you think is actually causing that channel to go up when it comes to customer experience?
So in the last couple of years, another big event has occurred. Most of you are partaking in it in some way, shape, or form. There's a real focus within the pharma industry to consolidate your web ecosystem, to unify your experiences between commercial and medical, to change the dynamic of engagement with your physician customers via the web channel, which means you're focusing on the output of what it is you're doing. You're actually doing proper UX testing, right? We're seeing that ourselves. So one of the major differences, that actually is working. Fantastic. But what, at the expense of what, right? We're seeing the other channels struggling now to keep up. Likewise, in some of this other data, it's, as you can see behind me, and this is a little bit about what you can start to interrogate from the CXQ report, which is other clients are saying, hey, look, in certain therapy areas, we've got increases. In other certain therapy areas, we've got significant declines. Imagine what's going on in the world of endocrinology and diabetology right now with weight loss. What does that tell you over the last year? If it's really crashing in terms of experience, why do you think that is from a physician perspective? They're not being maintained, right, through that experience that the world is changing around. Secondly, if you think about the reality of who those individuals are, and we talked a second ago about their expectations, digital enthusiasts are on the rise. Traditionalists are on the decline. So by default, that expectation is increasing. And then lastly, even if you look at some of the, we got some geographic data here, interestingly enough, only 2 countries have actually improved in their CX score, Japan and Saudi Arabia. And if you think about the everything that's going on in Saudi Arabia at the moment, that makes a lot of sense. And in Japan, it makes sense just for the fact that, hey, look, they're really good at maintaining a focus.
So that is the scorecard almost that we're getting from HCPs this year when it comes to the experiences that we're providing. What does this actually mean when we start looking at the internal capabilities that pharma organizations are creating? So with Inside DT, as well as looking at the customer experience through the CXQ, we also look at the maturity of the capabilities of pharma organizations themselves. And we do this through a product called the DEMA, or the Digital Excellence Maturity Assessment. And this has been going since 2014, when we've been assessing the capabilities specific for pharma organizations that are required to make strong customer engagements for HCPs. And what's been interesting is being able to see that actually over that period of time that we've been looking both at how pharma capabilities have been maturing and how HCP interactions have been scored by HCPs themselves, we can see neither of these areas have particularly moved forward. We have invested so much time, energy, and resource within our internal capabilities, but yet to see that step change that transformation is promised. Whilst also at the same time, HCPs are crying out to see the experiences that they see within their day-to-day consumer world, as talked about this morning, within the pharma environment, and they're not seeing anyone excelling when it comes to delivering against this. When we deep dive into this in more detail, we would actually see that if we look at the specifics of omni-channel planning and strategy against the scores that we saw for specific pharma organizations when it came to their HCP experiences, there was actually quite strong correlation. I'm not going to say causation because it is 8, and I know some of the conversations we've had this morning about different data elements having to come together with inside this piece. But it is definitely an interesting data point, Jeff, in terms of how these two things are aligning.
Yeah, and if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense. We talked earlier today again about the importance of taking insight and turning that into action. Well, fundamentally, the omni-channel strategy and planning capability is all about that. What standards are you setting? What is your patient journey, your physician journey? Is it really clear across your organization? And are you consistently able to apply that planning process in such a way that it's allowing you to build clear, consistent understanding of what's working and what's not, right? And then being able to understand that and then apply it back. both in an annual planning process, but also in your individual campaigning activities directly. And that's what makes good omni-channel strategy and planning, is getting it to actually be a robust, continuous, iterative learning process. And at the moment, most organizations don't do that well. So if you think about it, good CX is directly correlated to this working correctly. Right? It's proven data that showcases that if it works correctly, you're applying it correctly, consistently over time, it's actually making a difference. From a physician experience outcome perspective. I also learned today through some of the other presentations that there's a lot of focus on performance indicators still. Great, that's a great diagnostic. But at the end of the day, it's all about, is the physician you're engaging actually improving their experiences with you as an organization, and are they willing to, as a result of that, to prescribe more? But if we're all measuring performance data continuously, it doesn't give you that full picture. Hence the importance of really getting to customer experience and why strategy and planning is really imperative.
So why are we talking about this at a conference which is about making sense of the chaos when it comes to transformation? From my perspective, we've worked in CX for nearly 20 years now, and we've had promise time and time again that we were just on the cusp of customer-centric decision-making. The first time it was when it was ERP, CRM systems. This was going to be the silver bullet. Then we went into the world of cloud platforms and the ecosystems that were being created within inside that space, and we still didn't get there. And then 360-degree customer data and all the APIs that we were going to add into every single app that anyone had ever thought of making in an innovation hub. Yet again, we didn't get to where we wanted to be when it came to truly being able to think in terms of what it is that we're trying to create in terms of customer experiences to get to the right business outcomes for our business. I'm potentially an optimist. I think Gen AI could be the thing that does it. But what do you think?
What do you think? It's an interesting one, right? Is it another thing that we all have to then focus on, or is it something that's actually going to help? And I think at the end, what we learned a lot throughout the course of the day today, it's definitely an enabler, right? Now the question is, are we going to do it right, or are we just going to do it? And I think that's what we're trying to highlight. Even with those previous experiences, we all did it. Did we do it right continuously? Has it set the standard for the organization? And I think at the end of the day, it's actually going to be something that's really going to change things. But it's all about how well we adopt those things. If you remember from the previous discussion around digital, around I was mentioning in a table earlier today, remember late 2000s, early 2010s, the proliferation of websites that occurred within pharma that we all ended up having to consolidate back later is because, hey, we were great at getting it out there and facilitating that digital transformation. We just didn't really understand the implications of it well. We didn't actually pull it through and understand the impact. Well, AI is going to go through the same phenomenon if we're not careful. Watch out for the proliferation. Still great to experiment. It's important to do so, but remind ourselves about the experimentation loop. Right? There's a paralysis that can occur, and you just keep going without applying it. Once you do apply it, there's another major gap, which is the adoption chasm, right? Which is, how do you actually pull this thing through inside your organization to make it relevant so that it's actually the outcomes are based upon real world evidence outcomes, right? Sorry, I've been spending a lot of time in medical lately. But it's one of those things where it's really important to really understand those two and to really have, I think it was mentioned earlier, the right change management, the right ability to pull things through so it actually makes a difference inside the organization.
So do you think next year, if we're standing up on this stage, do you think the CXQ scores are going to go up? Do we think that they're getting it right this time in terms of really being able to create that step change?
Well, you put me on the spot. Depends on them, really. So fundamentally, I think I hope so, I guess is the right answer, because the key is there. We've all seen the capability of turning insights into actionable insights with artificial intelligence. A fundamental, simple capability that we've all been waiting on for years. It's at your fingertips now. So just that one fundamental thing is going to make a big difference. So I'm really hoping so.
And I think if we can truly tie it back to what we're trying to achieve, and I think that's the piece that we have been talking about today. I think some of the presentations that came earlier in the day, Brian talking about how do we make sure that we've got that North Star, that what we're aiming for with inside this transformation journey. Because if we get this right, we can differentiate ourselves on the experience that we provide and use GenAI, as you say, the tool that enables that to happen.
We're actually out of time. Any questions?
Any questions?
If you'd like to interrogate any of the data or have additional conversations, we're around.
Interrogate us.
Exactly.
Thank you very much.